tonight we're going to be picking Jodi's brain all about essential oils. So I'm really excited because this is an area I never have claimed to be much of an expert on. I'm more of a nutritional expert, but essential oils are something that I think medicinally have great value. I've seen them work tremendously well clinically in a number of people for different things. And my good friend Jodi, who we met a few years ago at another event with other healthcare professionals, we connected, and she's got a new book out, and I wanted to share that with you because I thought, we've all been going through COVID, right? And the brains are definitely something that we need to detoxify at this point. There's a lot of animosity, a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, frustration, just to start the emotional conversation. So welcome, Jodi. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So how did you get into essential oils? Tell me a little bit about your background and what landed you in that arena.
Yeah, I think necessity is the mother of invention. So I got into nutrition through my second child. My first one was really easy, just assumed I was a great mom. Had another one 22 months later who was not easy, was pretty nonstop, busy, active, and I kept thinking it was my parenting and trying every parenting book I could find. And then one day we were at a birthday party and he was being really well behaved. And my friend complimented me. And then another mother passed out a snack. It was a Ritz cracker. And he Jekyll-Hyde and took off. And once I kind of got him and pulled him back, she said, okay, my brother was on Ritalin his whole life, and he was just allergic to weird foods. Like, I'd never seen him kind of Jekyll-Hyde like that. You should take him to a nutritionist. And I did. And our cue with him used to be look at my nose. And he couldn't look at our nose. And a day after we changed his diet, he could look at our nose. And I realized, wow, this is crazy. I've been banging my head against the wall for 3 years, and it's diet. I have to learn more. So I went back and got a degree in nutritional therapy and was trying to help other moms, with wiggly kids. So I live in Seattle, and there was a practitioner here who was teaching this technique called muscle testing that I found very helpful because you could very quickly ascertain the root problem and the key remedy, even if the child was all over the place. And that came in handy when my next rock bottom hit. My then husband, I just thought he was really fun. After our first child was born, I realized he was bipolar and manic. I thought we stabilized him. Our second was born, and he went in the other direction and was getting more depressed by the day. And it became clear that he might die on my watch. So we moved him to a residential treatment facility. And the moment I knew he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him alive, it was like it was safe to collapse. And I did. And it wasn't particularly helpful because my kids were 5 and 7. I, had a full-time job. I was now a full-time mom, single mom, and I could barely get out of bed. And I was trying everything I knew to get better. And nothing seemed to work. I'd get up with the kids, make their breakfast, pack their lunch, drive them to school, come home, crawl back in bed, and set the alarm for pickup. And it wasn't sustainable. But luckily, I had a good friend who I had just helped with a fundraiser, and her gift to me was a big box of essential oils. There were about 50 oils. And I really didn't know from oils. I dabbled with herbs. I maybe used lavender in a bath, but that was about it. But she said, you've been so chronically stressed for so long, and high cortisol means high inflammation. I bet that your gut is such toast that nothing you're ingesting is actually getting absorbed or assimilated. Oils can go through the nose, they can go through transdermally, through the skin. Try this. And I thought, why not? I've tried everything else, it can't hurt. And I used my little muscle testing skill and tested the box for my adrenals and figured out 5 oils that would help, and got confused because I thought I would get one remedy. And so it occurred to me, oh wait, they're liquid, I can combine them. So I was a total newbie, grabbed a shot glass from the kitchen, made my first blend, put it on my adrenals, on my low back, and felt like myself for the first time in a month, and got more done in that day than I had probably in the entire preceding month, and realized, okay, that worked. I'm going to keep leaning in towards what works. So that night when it's not uncommon to be kind of high stress during the day and completely insomniac at night. So I made up another remedy, and I just kept making things up until I started to feel more like myself. And then my friends were asking, oh, what are you doing? We want to try it. So I'm like giving it to them thinking, this is strange, but it seems to work. And when I finally felt enough like myself that I had the bandwidth to go online and research, I was really surprised that no one was really looking at oils through the lens of balancing organ systems and regions of the brain, and that the way they presented it, they made blending feel very complicated. So I was almost grateful that I hadn't started with research, which I normally do, because I would have felt unqualified and probably wouldn't have tried it. So that's really how I got started. And then much like so many of us that see kind of the benefit, oh, wow, when I remove this food, it works. Oh, when I add this food in, it works. And then you start to reverse engineer. Why is that working? Like, it's so interesting that, when I smell an oil, when I'm feeling tired, it seems to give me more energy. When I put oils on, reflex points that help balance the nervous system, I feel better. So I kind of dug in and really tried to research it to explain why certain oils did certain things and why certain application points seemed to be beneficial where others were less so.
Awesome. So like so many practitioners I talk to, their passion really grows from a personal experience. And it usually is in an area where there's a lot of ridicule. I mean, I've talked to, as you know, I'm not a doubter. I don't disbelieve that essential oils can be helpful, but I know, scientifically, you ask, 100 medical doctors and maybe one or two will tell you there's any merit to it at all. The other 98 will tell you there's no science, when in fact I know there is science because I've done some research, although I don't claim to be the expert.
That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, your book really laid out a lot of things very nicely.
Thank you. That was my goal.
Yeah. And for those of you who are interested more in essential oils, make sure you pick up a copy. You can we've got a link up in the stream for you already where you can grab a free chapter 1. And then, I would encourage you, read that if you like it, go buy it, go pick up a copy of the book itself, because there's a lot of great charts, a lot of great diagrams, a lot of simple to understand. To me, it's one of the first essential oil books I've looked at that were really built direct to consumer for understanding and ease of application. So you did a great job in that way.
Thank you.
Let's talk. So you got into it out of necessity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things you talked about just in the first part of your book was this sense of smell being necessary as a survival mechanism. And I love that. I believe that to be true this whole year with masks and everything else. I'm like, what are we really doing here? Talk about that survival mechanism in smell and olfaction and how important that is and how people should understand that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of your 5 senses, your sense of smell is the only one with direct access to the amygdala, which is kind of the safety gauge in the brain. All the other senses are routed through the thalamus first. And most people don't realize that olfactory cells, nose cells, are actually brain cells. That is where the blood-brain barrier, kind of the security system for the brain, is the thinnest. It's where the capillaries, that get into the bloodstream that then carry things through the body, are the closest to the surface. There's a reason that cocaine is inhaled through the nose and anesthesia is delivered through the nose. The ease of delivery and how efficiently it gets into the system kind of predicates how people use it. So when you smell something, usually if you're going to ingest it, it has to go through the whole digestive cascade and then go through the liver and get into the bloodstream. And then it's distributed to the whole body and to the brain if it can pass through the blood-brain barrier, which really only allows super small fat-soluble molecules through, like essential fatty acids. We know they're great anti-inflammatory brain food because they actually get into the brain. Oils, the reason you can smell, like if you were to, smell an oil in your kitchen, like olive oil, you could smell it if you held your bottle to the nose, but if you put it on the counter and walked across the kitchen, you would not smell it. Oils like essential oils, like peppermint, you can smell them across the room because the molecules are so small, they're called volatile, that they literally are carried in the air and throughout the environment. And that super small size, it's what allows them to actually get into the brain and access regions of the brain that really help with our safety gauge. One of my favorite pieces of research in the book, there is a Nobel Prize winner who's also from Seattle, my hometown, named Linda Buck, and they were looking at kind of the sense of smell, right? It keeps you alive because you can smell food and water. You can also smell predator odor, so you can avoid the predator. So she was isolating specific olfactory receptors that pick up on predator odor, and then she took it one step further and looked at what would cancel out that kind of fear response that's triggered by the predator odor, and it was the smell of roses. Like that whole adage, stop and smell the roses, there's a lot of value to that. Rose is one of the best oils for anyone that's going through any kind of really intense emotional experience, anger, fear, sadness, grief. If you're feeling, sometimes emotions can almost feel like a tsunami, a wave. Sorry, my dog really wants to express this point. But smelling rose, it just helps to kind of calm that intense emotional experience. Did that answer your question?
It did. Yeah, absolutely. So if I wanted to be a predator, I would just douse myself in rose oil.
A stealth predator, yeah. The wolf in sheep's clothing. Rose smell the sheep's clothing, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about, you talk about a number of different concepts in the book, and you go through kind of phases of healing. And I want you to really elaborate to the audience on phases of healing. And then as you do that too, I also want to get some information from you about specific oils for two things. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but one is I really want people who are watching tonight to walk away with a sense of what can I do specifically if I have an oil kit at home, what can I do that is going to help mitigate the stress of what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah.
And two, one of the concerns a lot of people keep coming back to me with is, hey, my sense of smell is gone. Like I got COVID, my sense of smell is gone. I'd like to get your take on essential oil therapy for the potential of helping re-engage smell. So
yeah, I can speak to both of those. So the whole principle of the book, it kind of, the first part really does get into the science, like people who say like, oh, oils, that's like witchcraft, that's what yoga moms, they just diminish it. And what people don't realize is that plants, oils are the concentrated essence of plants, and plants are the basis for most of the pharmaceutical drugs. 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs that have been authorized in the last 30 years are derived from plants. Like white willow bark is kind of modified a little bit, and that's aspirin. Valerian root is Valium. And there are constituents, chemical constituents of the plants that have been shown to either have sedative effects or to support flavonoids and the healthy gut microbiome. So there's a lot of research that goes into it. But what was interesting to me, and you might find this as well, I practiced for a long time, and while everyone is bio-individual, I started noticing patterns that people that were doing everything right, they were eating all the right food, they were trying to exercise and get sunlight and have healthy relationships. There were always three things that seemed to be out of balance, that even though they were doing everything right, they really weren't, these were kind of hard to scratch areas. And that was kind of sleep and modulating your nervous system, like making sure that you were not stuck in the stress gauge. And then also people were good at mobilizing toxins, like eating, a lot of green leafy vegetables and kind of starting the detox process, but their lymphatic system and their drainage pathways, it was kind of like the toxins were mobilized, but they weren't necessarily being shepherded out of the body, and so they were recirculating. And those were three areas that I noticed oils played a really powerful role. And I'll delve into all of them. And then the other two are kind of energy and immune modulation. But I am not one of those people who think there's an oil for everything. If you're having a heart attack, go to the ER. If you break your arm, oils can help with circulation and drainage, but the bone will heal. Diet might even be more important than oils for that. But I do think that there are certain issues, namely stress, sleep, drainage, energy, and immune modulation, that oils play a really powerful role. So getting to your stress question, we're all kind of in this anxious, isolated, weird state where we're not really, we might be more anxious than we normally are. So the easiest low-hanging fruit solution for that, anxiety, different regions of the brain do different things. There's a whole branch of chiropractic called functional neurology that's looking at the different regions of the brain, the different hemispheres of the brain. And what they're really trying to do is bring balance to the brain, because when the brain is in balance, then it shows up as its best self. It functions well. So the right hemisphere is known as kind of the ruminating hemisphere. And it's really our forehead area, our frontal lobe, that helps with executive function, with paying attention, with focus. And also when anxiety is present, it seems to be the right frontal lobe that is overactive. And so functional neurologist Titus Chu taught me that the easiest way to balance that out is to stimulate the left frontal lobe. And the fastest way to do that is to smell anything, any oil in your house. You can peel a citrus fruit like a tangerine, and oils live in the peel of the fruits, and just smell 3 to 5 breaths. In smelling something through the left nostril, you're then stimulating the left forehead, you're balancing the 2 hemispheres, and the panic attack, the test anxiety, if you have an athlete in your house, the performance anxiety, it calms right down. So that is the easiest thing to remember. Just smell something through your left nostril in those moments of anxiety, and it can be anything you already like. The other thing that tends to go on is that our operating system for our body is called our autonomic nervous system. It controls all of our automatic functions, things we don't think about, our heart rate, our breathing, being able to digest our food, being able to detoxify and eliminate waste, anti-inflaming, immune function. And it's designed to keep us alive, so it has different speeds. If there is danger present, it shifts into the fight or flight speed, kind of the sympathetic branch of the nervous system. And resources are allocated towards survival. So for example, your breathing increases so you can get more oxygen to fuel your ability to keep yourself alive. Hormones like cortisol spike to increase your energy available. Blood is routed away from your digestion and your detoxification to your arms and your legs so you can run quickly. Your vision changes. The pupils of your eye, the black part of your eye, get really big like saucers so that you can take in more light and selectively choose things that will keep you alive. It actually shuts down your ability to take in a bunch of information and access your creativity, because if you get too creative, you might die in that moment. But this stress response, it's not just that the tiger is chasing us down the street. It can be anticipatory stress, fear about your health, your finances, your relationship, what's going on in the world. So many of us are kind of stuck in this high gear survival state. And that means that all of the things that happen when we're not running from danger, like digesting our food, detoxifying, turning on our immune function, anti-inflaming, they aren't actually getting taken care of. So our body is prioritizing what should be a short-term experience and kind of getting stuck in that gear. Now, if you think of it like a gear shift, you can either be in the sympathetic branch, fight or flight, or the parasympathetic, rest and digest. The longest nerve in the body that most people have never heard of, your vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10, serves as that gear shift. And it starts at the back of the neck, splits, and is most accessible kind of right behind the ear. If you're listening and feel behind the ear, that is your mastoid bone. That is where the vagus nerve is the most accessible to the surface and actually the thickest. It then winds through your throat, your heart, your lungs, your every organ of digestion and detoxification. And anything you do to stimulate any organ that is touched by the vagus nerve helps to activate the parasympathetic response. This is one of the benefits of deep breathing, or yoga. You're doing twists and turns. Exercising activates the vagus nerve. There are a bunch of ways that you can do it, but early on, I started my company in 2012, right around the time this New York neuroscientist named Kevin Tracy was playing with surgically implanting a pacemaker-like device right behind the earlobe. And he was using that to electrically stimulate the vagus nerve where it's most accessible. And he was having great results, such great results, in fact, that the FDA authorized this for migraines, epilepsy, depression. And I thought, stimulate, because I was playing with how do I activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And I kept thinking, it's relaxing, like lavender, that's sedative, chamomile. And I kept checking it with my Oura ring because heart rate variability is a really good measure of parasympathetic tone. And it wasn't, I kept not moving the needle. But when I saw that research, I thought, wait a minute. So many oils are stimulatory. And by that, I mean, if you were to put a drop on your arm, it might turn red. It might feel hot. If you do this, remember oil and water don't mix. So you don't want to put water on to dilute it. You would grab any oil in your kitchen, coconut oil, olive oil, and dilute with that. But the point being, I started playing with stimulatory oils. Like, what can I put on this spot, using this spot almost like an acupuncture point or a reflex point to kind of influence the vagus nerve and induce the parasympathetic response. And the best oil turned out to be clove, and it's really high in this chemical constituent, eugenol, that has a lot of powerful healing remedies. But, oils and blends are science, right? Clove has slightly medium-sized molecules, so it takes like 20 minutes to get through the skin into the area. Lime and citrus oils have very small molecules, so when you combine them like a blend, you get a super stimulatory oil that gets through the skin very quickly. And so just topically applying the blend of clove and lime, I call it parasympathetic in the book, it literally helps you gear shift. It would be like you're riding your bike, suddenly you realize, oh, it's hard, I'm in high gear. You downshift to low gear and suddenly it's easy again. You are feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed, your heart is racing, you're having kind of rapid metabolism. You're like, wait a minute, I am stuck in sympathetic. So how do I gear shift? You can topically apply oils, you can do box breathing. There are many things you can do. Datis Karazian, who's a practitioner that I really admire, has been talking about this for decades. He talks about, you can gag yourself with a tongue depressor. You can splash your face with freezing water. You can gargle for 10 minutes. And I knew you could do this. And I was telling people, almost no one, compliance, like that doesn't sound fun. Why would I want that? Yuck. But oils, it's just a really nice hack. You can literally flip a bottle, put it behind your ear, put it behind your child's ear. And it's almost like shifting into, the parasympathetic state is required for digestion. People can be eating the perfect diet. And if the blood isn't routed to their organs of digestion, they're not able to digest, absorb, and assimilate things. They're not breaking down their proteins as well as they could be. And that suddenly turns on the immune system and causes other problems. So do you have any questions or?
No, I love that. I mean,
okay.
One of the things we see in people with chronic illness is chronic stress, right? The chronic inflammatory process, upregulates sympathetic, nervous system, and they get an imbalance. And that imbalance, food and diet certainly effectively help to change that gear. But some people are so stuck in that gear, right? They need additional modalities. And I love that, because that's a very good takeaway. So you said using citrus like lemon, lime, combined with the clove, because of the eugenol, and the clove has a stimulatory effect to upregulate the vagus, the sympathetic.
Yeah, and one note on citrus. If citrus is pressed and you put it on your skin and go out on the sun, that might make you more likely to sunburn. But if it's steam distilled, meaning that they boil it and kind of it goes off that way, that does not have photosensitivity. So just, if anyone's listening and they're like, oh, I want to do that at home, be sure to use like a distilled lime or a distilled lemon, not a pressed lemon or lime.
Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.